thank you so much for being here. You are not at home. We were talking before this started just a few minutes ago. You've been moving all over the place through the whole pandemic. How are you? How is the fam? I should mention to people who are watching who don't know Chanel, she's got 3 kids. 2 of them are twins.
Yes.
And then an older boy as well. So how's everybody?
Right. So I have 7-year-old twins, boy-girl twins, and then a 10-year-old big brother. It's crazy. So we live in Manhattan. We live right in the thick of the city. I had vocal surgery at the beginning of March, or the end of February, to remove a polyp on my vocal cord. And so I was off for 6 weeks. And after my first 3 weeks, when I was cleared to resume talking, light talking, I told my ENT, I'm like, I have not been off since I was like 16. I'm like, I wanted to go to the beach, and COVID was like starting to be a thing, but it wasn't what it is now. So she said, well, maybe you could drive somewhere. And she was like, what about South Carolina? There's some beautiful coastal towns, in South Carolina. And I was like, really? Okay. So we Googled a couple of places, and the rest is history. We found an area that we've fallen in love with. We've been here since early March, and every month we just keep extending our stay. And so we have 1 more month, and then we'll be back in New York City. But it's honestly been a break because we live in the city. We don't have a lot of space outside. We have like a little bitty patio. So here they can run around, they can go swimming. It's not far from the beach. I can work. The kids were doing distance learning for a while, which was pretty cool because they could, work by day and then play out, outside by night. So it's been a really good break for my family. So Lord willing, we stay healthy. Hopefully, this breaks as a win for us.
I hope so too, because I feel like I was saying to somebody earlier today, every time I feel like we're starting to see the light, then we're sucked back in again. And I'm like, is this wave 2 or is this like the second part of wave 1?
I know. Even my kids, like my 7-year-old daughter just said that just a second ago, like, man, this is not ending. And then I had the kids, because they're literally, now that school's out, sitting around and doing nothing because we're not doing camps here. So I have this thing called mommy school, which it's hit and miss when we do it, but we did mommy school.
It sounds hit and miss, Chanel. I gotta be honest with you. I'm not sure that I can buy onto this.
Listen, I'm a giver. Anyone listening can steal this idea. So on Friday, we convened mommy school. And they're like, and I'm like, okay, your assignment is to write an essay. And they're like, I'm like, yes, write an essay about how it's been being a 7-year-old or a 10-year-old in the middle of COVID. Like, what you understand about it, what it's like being away from home or whatever. And I have to tell you, Carrie, it was really interesting to see each one of them kind of had a different perspective.
Really?
And just to see, we won't get started on the run-on sentences and all that, but just to see the thoughts that are in their heads. It makes me realize that even though there's a little bit of anxiety about when this is going to end and what school is going to be like when they go back, they've actually enjoyed the family time.
That's
being
good.
together with each other. My boy twin talked about how he and his twin made a fort and they put blankets on the floor. Like, I asked him about COVID, but you see, that's what came to mind. So I think if we do this right, perhaps maybe the bright spot out of all of this is that our kids will hopefully just remember the love they felt and just the sense of, oh, we're all together. We're the ones that have to do all the stressful stuff.
All the other stuff. So that is a fabulous segue. It's almost like you've done this before, Chanel. Have you done this before? No. So Chanel and I should mention, go quite a ways back. We worked together in Philadelphia, so she knows all my favorites.
My 10-year-old, all the clothes I wore when I was pregnant were yours. Have you forgotten about that? I can't remember whether it was, they're all your clothes.
Oh.
You had a big, or were they Jen's and then I gave them to you? One of the other.
One of the, you know what? That was probably more likely.
We had a big vault of clothes for like maternity moo-moos that you wear.
Fashions have changed even in like the last 5 years. I know.
They have like hip clothes, hip clothes that like don't look like
how would you like this burlap bag?
With the belt?
It's a lovely shade of tan. Yeah. Oh my God, what a nightmare. Well, so let me ask you this. Because we're talking about resilience today, and like we know that applies to the news business, and I want to talk to you about that. But do you feel like that's one of the things, like one of the character traits that they're always teaching in school right now? Grit, determination, resilience, blah 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 blah. Have you figured out a way to talk do you talk to your kids about what that means in what they're dealing with right now and how it applies to family? Like, this is how you get through it. This is how you think about things. This is how you maintain mindset. Is that part of that conversation, or are they still too young?
No, I think we have had to have some tough conversations. And again, that's why I asked them to write about it, because I kind of wanted to see how they're wrapping their minds around it.
Yeah.
So my 10-year-old, he was like, this is not going away. People need to wear masks. They need to take it seriously. We need to do some research to figure out a vaccine. Like, he's very, A, B, C, D, E. Whereas, one of my twins is just like, we're just going to be here for a while. Don't know what's going to happen at school.
Yeah.
Like, so they're the way they understand it is by how it's affecting their own lives, which makes sense.
Yeah.
I did casually mention the other day, and then I kind of let off of the accelerator a little bit. I said, you guys realize that when you go back to school, you may have to wear masks. Like, your teacher may have to wear a mask. And I just happened to be on the phone with one of my girlfriends, and she said, you know what, when they get to New York, they'll see that everybody's wearing masks. So by the time they get into the classroom, maybe it won't be as big of a shock. Whereas right now, since people around here aren't really wearing masks, they haven't even had to wear them. They don't go anywhere. They literally just play outside. So I think maybe it'll be kind of a gradual
progression
to reality. But kids really are resilient. Like, and with the protests and stuff, I had to talk to them. And last night we were watching the BT Awards, and a lot of it was like, social activism, and they're very aware. I realize that I feel like in some ways my daughter, who's right over there, who's not listening, but I don't want them to be scared. Like, I don't want them to think that because there was a video or something like that where it was like police and I don't know if they're fighting or something. And she said, is that happening right now? I said, no, they're just acting. She goes, but did it happen? So then I thought, okay, we're going to go down the rabbit hole on this one.
Yeah.
So I recognize that when images are on TV, either I need to talk about them and address them or turn them off. But just leaving them on to have and then they're just kind of guessing.
Their imagination goes wild.
Yep.
How have you dealt, and I saw, and this is not COVID related, but it's more protest related and dealing with issues rather of racial injustice. I saw one of your posts from a couple of months ago or maybe a month ago, when you were talking about how you need to talk to your kids, and you were very descriptive. It was like my beautiful brown children with their big brown eyes, and I can't not speak about this, but the truth hurts. How do you foster, as like as a woman of color, and you've got a big job and a lot of people see you, but it doesn't mean that aspect doesn't affect you, right? And it doesn't affect your family. How do you talk to them about resilience when it comes to who they are and what they look like and what that means in the way that they interact with the world?
Absolutely. It's really interesting because just this past weekend, if you think about 7-year-olds and 10-year-olds and middle schoolers, a lot of them are on social media, right? A lot of them are into YouTube sites and what have you. And so my 10-year-old they're all into, well, this person got this many likes and this person got that many likes. And I'm like, oh, here we go again. And he was upset because somebody did a thumbs down, and turns out it was like one of his friends on his little thing that he made, right? So he was so upset about one thing that went down, right? And so we had to have a discussion about, look, not everybody is going to like you. When you do things, you have to do them because you like to do them and not worry about what other people think, right? So we had that whole discussion. And I felt kind of sad because I realized that just comes a week after we already had another discussion about race and police, and they wanted to know what that was all about. So it's very interesting because the last few weeks we've had several conversations about things that any 10-year-old, for example, would be concerned about, and then things in particular for a young Black child. So it's been a lot. So when you talk about resilience, I feel like I'm living it because you're constantly giving them the reality, but then trying to build them up to let them know that that doesn't define who they are. So it's like this constant, like, I'm not trying to shield you from it. I wanted to let you know what's going on, but don't you worry, you're going to be okay. That kind of thing.
I mean, are there specifics? How do you have that conversation? I mean, you can have a very high level, but you're right. Like my daughter does the same thing. And obviously, we're white, but she'll look at it in the same way through her eyes.
Sure.
She sees people on social media who look different than she does. And she views herself in a negative light because of whatever it is that they're doing. They have this many followers, or they're skinnier than she is, or whatever the case may be. I mean, it's two different issues, but they are under the kind of the same country.
Yeah, it's like two different issues, but it's in this moment, I'm like, it's my best example of trying to explain when your child feels different, you want them to know that it's okay to be different as long as you don't feel less than, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my whole thing. Like right now, since we've been on vacation, you know, I'm letting my daughter wear her hair out. I've been playing around with mine every day. It looks like a different
Looks fabulous, by the way.
But just trying to really double down on who you are. I feel like it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're black, white, curly hair, straight hair. This time for me in particular has given me this clarity that I just have to double down on who I am, for better or worse. I feel like I've been better at what I do in some ways being away for a while.
Have you really?
I really do think so.
It's given you new perspective or a little bit of a break?
Yeah, it's both. I think for anybody watching, I think, you know, as much as we, you know, at first we're like, oh God, we have to be away from home. And there are certainly challenges which we could talk about with, you know, the kids being at home or what have you. Yeah. But I feel like if you try to find the sun in all of it, it's that when you're away, sometimes it kind of gives you perspective. And especially since I'm so far away from 30 Rock, I'm in a town in South Carolina, you kind of end up really being your own person, right? Because there have been so many times where I wanted to see what my natural hair would look like on television and like let it like wet and then twist it and like see. But what happens is you come into 30 Rock, there's a whole hair and makeup team, you sit down in the chair, you know, everybody's just going. You look around and no one else is doing it. So you just kind of follow the path that's there.
You fall into line almost.
Yes, especially with news anchors, like blazer, hoops, bop, bop, bop. You almost become a bot. You don't want to be, but you just end up falling into line, right? But when you're away from it, you get this strength to kind of try something else. And because you're almost in a vacuum, and then you look up and it's okay.
Yeah.
So now I wonder, gosh, when I go back, am I going to do this? Yeah, why not? But it took me being away to give me the whatever to even try it, just because you had this clarity of like, there aren't any other voices. It's just you. And so I would say, you know, whatever you're doing, if you're writing a book or if you're in marketing or, you know, whatever your career is, to try to use this time to really kind of zoom in and find your own voice.
Yes, because it's often drowned out by everything around us.
Yes.
Now is a good time. So let me ask you that. Let me revert back a little bit to talking more about you in your role. And, you know, I know from my time in the news business, and I'm certainly not where you are, but there is a certain amount of determination and resilience that has to come along with, especially as a woman, especially I imagine as a woman of color. And not only that, but it's such an uber competitive industry, and there's a lot of friggin' rejection that comes along the way as well. So how have you cultivated that mindset to get you from where you were when you first started to where you are now?
It is very difficult. I almost feel like I have this metaphorical, like if you were going in the woods on a journey, right? And somebody gave you a knapsack with all sorts of resources, right? I feel like I've got this, I've never made this analogy before, so work with me because I'm
going with it.
So I have my little knapsack for my journey of life, right? And so sometimes, I'm going to use this again, I'm going to perfect it. But sometimes you go in your bag and you may need a little bit of attitude, right? Like you don't like this, whatever, I think this is a good story or, you know, whatever. And that works. But you get to another point in the journey where that doesn't work. So you need something else in your toolkit, right? And so what happened to me, you know, getting through local news and then getting into the network and then living in the city period and just being in New York after 5 years in the network, I feel like I know why I lost my voice. Even though it was like a medical situation, I had reached the end of my rope where I physically had literally lost my voice, right? My bag was empty. I couldn't figure out anything to make me feel better. I felt like I was losing my sense of purpose a little bit. Like, what am I doing? Like, you know, still working every day and smiling and being grateful for the situation, but still feeling like something was missing. And it took me literally losing my voice to have to be on leave and not allowed to talk, to try to put new things in my little bag, right? And so it's only been maybe 8-9 weeks since I've had the surgery, but I feel so renewed. And what I recognize is now in my 40s, the things that I used to use don't work anymore. I've needed new tools. And so that's what I've been cultivating lately, are new tools for the next piece of my journey. And it's been really, really helpful, if that makes any sense.
No, it has. You know, it's funny because as you were talking with your analogy, which I like, and I think is
So random.
you should totally keep it up here and use it whenever you need to. But one of the things that I remember you saying, and I heard you say this when we were working together in Philadelphia, somebody was asking you a question about mentorship or what you've learned in the business or how you've navigated things. I'm pretty sure this was you. I hope this was you. If it wasn't, you take credit for it anyway. You said something like this: ask for what you want.
Oh, absolutely.
Take what you get, use what you get to get what you want.
Absolutely.
Right?
I say that all the time. Yep, absolutely. Somebody taught me that when I was an intern as a junior in high school, in college. I heard this one intern was like, man, this old man just told me to ask for what you want, take what you get, use what you get to get what you want. And I was like, ooh. And I remember typing it out when I got home. And I was interning at the time at American Eagle, or interning for free and working at American Eagle to get money. And I was sleeping on the
I'm like, interning at American Eagle, that really sucks.
It like took me back. I was like, I was making no money then. And so I remember when I say I propped it up, it was on this like tackle box that I had made for my jewelry because I was literally sleeping on my sister's couch then. But anyway, and it said, ask for what you want, take what you get, use what you get to get what you want. And I've carried that literally this sheet of typing paper with me for decades because it's so true. I mean, when you're asking for something, you may not get what you want, but you just kind of have to use that, you know, to get the next thing. And I look back at my career and it's kind of been that way, frankly.
It had, well, so like, share with us one of the things that I always found difficult because I don't think I ever grew skin that was quite thick enough to deal with all the criticism that comes when you have a job that's on camera. And it's not just from bosses or managers, but it's also from viewers, right? I mean, hell, you know, if you're not wearing the right outfit that day, you're going to hear about it times 1,000.
Yeah.
And so how have you been able to cultivate a mindset or resilience mindset that kind of helps you get past that? Because those things used to take me down for a couple of days.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know what happens is that's why I said it was so important to know your purpose, because if you are so clear in why you're in the position that you're in or what you plan to do with it, then the criticism doesn't feel like it matters as much because it's not about me, right? So in Philly, I got to a point where I was like, okay, not to get all spiritual on you, but I'm like, okay, I give myself away, God, like, what is my purpose, right? And I remember right after I felt like I released it, I got letters from girls, even in Philly, it would be like little brown girls that were like, you know, you wore purple today, so I wore purple to school. You know, and it seems so silly.
No, it's not.
It's just to see somebody on the news who looks like them, right? And so fast forward to the network, it's the same thing. Like you recognize that it's such a gift to be in this place. And so for me, I also know who I am and whose I am. And I think about like all those days when, you know, my grandmother was like working on spelling words with me. And then when I would say, I want to be a news reporter, she would say, oh my gosh, you're going to be great. You have to do this and you have to do that. So sometimes when I'm in these rooms or I get these tweets, I'm like, you know what? I have been working on this since I was in 5th grade. I'm finally here. Kids can turn on the news and see someone who looks like them, you know, quite often. I have a voice, I have a reason that I'm here. And when it's time for me to leave, you know, I think about with bad bosses, for example. I've had bad bosses in the past. And it took
in the news business?
I know, right? It took me saying, you know what? The good Lord got me here. And when the good Lord is ready for me to go, I will go. Yeah. So you can say whatever you want, but as long as I feel like I am in my purpose, it helps to kind of bounce off those negative things. It really does. And I also have empathy for people. Like if I feel sorry for you, then you can be mean. And I'm just like, it's your own heart.
Kindness.
Yeah. You need some soul surgery on your own.
Right. So go that route instead of allowing it to. So were there any like strategies or tactics that you used to get to that spot where you are now, where you're able to just, or was it a kind of just a spirit, not just, but was it more of a spiritual thing for you?
I honestly think it has to, the spiritual piece is the biggest piece of it, because I don't think that we are humanly wired to not let it penetrate unless there's something else that's like a force around you. And I firmly believe that. You know, I genuinely believe that there is a reason for me to do this. And so I think that was why, you know, these last few weeks when I was off, I was like trying to soul search, okay, so now what am I trying to do now? And so for some reason being away, it just doesn't seem to matter as much anymore. Yeah. Like I showed my son, you know, I did an interview with Ryan Lochte, as you know, and it was like, you know, years ago in Philly. And it went viral.
Okay, hold on a sec, stand down. Everybody listening must Google Chanel Jones, Mike Jarek, Ryan Lochte. I'm not kidding you. If you want to laugh,
I'm like ashamed now. It's so funny. I like watching it. I'm ashamed that I was laughing so hard. But the point is, I just showed this to my kid because they don't know. I just showed my oldest son this weekend because he was sad about his one dislike. And I was like, I want to show you something. And I showed him this YouTube video of my co-host and my old co-host. It had 1 million views, 4,600 and something thumbs up, and 263 thumbs down.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, when this first happened, I was horrified that I had 263 thumbs down, like to the point where it physically like hurt. And then I felt that, and like it manifested so physically when you feel, when people are mean, you know.
When they're mean.
It did for me. I felt,
oh yeah.
And so now I look at it and I'm like, hey, 1 million views, 263 downs. It could be worse, you know? So when I showed him, I was like, so your little one, how about 260? And look, I'm doing okay. I'm still doing what I want to do in life. You know what I mean? So it's funny with a little bit of perspective, you know, and even now, like sometimes I'll check Twitter. There are days where I don't even go on Twitter. No. Like I feel like Instagram sometimes will be like the loving, warm, happy place where we can, I don't know, it just seems a little bit more loving. Is it just?
No, it is. It's much harder to like hate on someone's picture of them and their family than it is to like tweet them some snarky comment about their hair or their clothing or something.
Yeah. So I do this on occasion. Yeah. And then Instagram, it's like my curated little happy space.
It's your soft spot.
Yeah.
100%. So I never knew that because I remember that interview with you and Ryan, and I always just thought that you and Mike, who is her co-host, you enjoyed that and there were no second thoughts, but you were able to get back on the air and act like nothing. This is the real challenge for people who are not familiar with TV, is like to get back on the air when inside you're crumbling and you're feeling judgment coming from all angles, and the show must go on. Like, how did you do that? How did you keep it going?
It's really hard. Gosh, that's even been since I've been here in South Carolina. When I first got here, look, my colleagues have teleprompters, major studio light kits. I mean, the whole thing. I have I kid you not, this is the phone I use to broadcast to the country. Just this one. I'm not even kidding. This is what I use with an app. I have one light ring, and then I have a bunch of books where I have the things like stacked up. Yeah. So it's pretty janky, but it works, and people at home would never know. But there were times where we were having problems with the Wi-Fi and it kept crashing, and, you know, it was starting to be like, okay, well, am I going to need to go back to New York? And then the kids were constantly coming down, and so I would get nervous and mess up my words. It is very difficult to end a newscast when you mess it up, to then force yourself to get back up the next day. It is a mental something. And they say you're only as good as your last live shot, right? So for me, I'm like, okay, I need to do another one and actually not screw up so that I can get back on the bike. Because that night or that space in between really screwing up and then having to get back on the horse is very difficult. Like it is.
And it's crucial too. You must get back on the horse. I mean,
and you must nail it. Like you can only screw up so many days in a row. Like if you flub a little bit, I remember I went through a phase where I was just getting kind of nervous. And so I would like, not bad, because we know how to recover, you know, but I just couldn't, you know, it's like every read, I'm like, what? Screwing this, you know, it's just stupid. And so, and it happened like several days in a row where I was like, Lord, and I was right here. And so the morning of, you know, I'm like, okay, I got up a little bit earlier than necessary, you know, read through the scripts more than normal. And I just thought, okay, let me slow down and really be in the moment, because I physically can't take another day of just like, and again, people at home may not even know, but I noticed that I was kind of flubbing through. And so when those moments happen, you really have to zoom in, whether it's waking up in the morning and doing some deep breathing, or, you know, a Calm app or whatever it is. Like you have to be able to find a place to go to pull from, for sure.
I cannot believe that our half hour is up.
Oh, it is.
I know. Chanel, you were awesome.
We can do really this time, everybody.
It was such a delight to have you. Thank you so much. I know that you're super busy and your kids are running around and your husband is probably sick of you talking to the computer and talking to the phone.
I have a shoot right after this, so I'll still be sitting in this chair.
What are you doing?
So today we're doing, what are we doing? Oh, this guy, we're featuring different photographers who capture all sorts of images, from COVID to protests to you know, it's been really interesting. So we have like a compilation of pictures and we're going to ask them, you know, what they were thinking when they shot this or
what was going on and the mood and the mindset and all that other good stuff.
Wait, did I answer anything about resilience?
You did. We talked about it the entire time.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure you got what you need.
I hope so. Panelists and attendees, let me know if you got what you needed. But yes, I mean, I think you made so much sense when you're talking about that you've got to get back up on the horse and you've got to find that spot and what does it look like and how do you have these conversations?
And your kids see it. Your kids see that they see when you get a little frustrated. They see, and I don't want them thinking, there are times when my kids have seen me cry. Yeah. And it's like, that's fine, but I also want them to know that their mom can kick butt when needed, right?
That's right. That's
yes,
exactly
like,
right.
Absolutely. So then you'll be able to look back and let's say as a boss was crappy, I can say, you know, I had one and let me tell you what I learned from this. Yeah. And last but not least, I will say, when it comes to maybe if there's someone in your life who's hard to work with, or if there's an issue that you're having, for me, I've noticed that quite often I'll like pray about it. And it's like, the good Lord won't move the mountain. Like he'll make me climb it. Like I remember one boss one year when I was in my 20s, or I don't even remember, he just gave me such a hard time. He was like always just demeaning, like just rough. And I used to be like, why is this man so mean, you know? And right when I told him one day, listen, either you're going to respect me or we're going to have to figure something out because I can't take it anymore. I do my work. I read 8 billion papers a day. I know I do good work, blah, blah, blah. And I like finally got it all out. And he just looked at me. He was so nice after that. And then literally announced like days later that he was moving. Like days. And I could give you so many examples in my career where someone who gave me issues or there was this one issue, I had to figure it out. And then once I figured it out, it was like, it goes away. And it's like, you have to,
why was I so freaked out about that?
But I had to learn to deal with it.
Hammer it.
Yeah.
All right.
Cheers, everybody.
You are the best. Thank you very, very, very much.